The 18-year-old apprentice spotted me in the living room before I even heard the door. I wasn't supposed to be home when the crew returned. The kitchen remodel had run late, and the late summer Phoenix heat pressed against the walls. I'd stepped out to grab a clean shirt from the couch, only to realize the front door was unlocked and footsteps were already inside. When I looked up, there he was, Mateo, the new bricklayer's apprentice, sun-browned forearms lightly dusted with mortar, safety glasses tucked into a mess of dark hair. He froze for a breath, then offered a crooked grin, as if the moment itself had surprised him. I stood there startled, still warm from the shower, a towel slung over my shoulder. The kid who'd spent the week laying brick along my patio watched me try and fail to look unfazed. What he said next wasn't teasing or rude. It was quiet, simple, and somehow disarming. "You look real." That word, real, hung in the space between us. I laughed, a shaky cover for the sudden rush of awareness, but something had already shifted. For years I'd kept my feelings folded between work emails and weekend plans, careful and contained. But that afternoon cracked something open. It wasn't just a glance or a dare. It was a pull between two people from different worlds. One still figuring himself out, the other pretending he already had. I didn't know it then. But the line we were about to cross would test my honesty, my patience, and everything I thought love was supposed to be. The awkwardness of the moment settled on my face before I could hide it. "You look real," he said quietly, neither teasing nor apologizing. My pulse hammered in a way that felt anything but professional. I pulled a t-shirt over my head, pretending it didn't cling. "You weren't supposed to be back until 3, I managed. "I wasn't supposed to be this. Miguel sent me," he said, tapping the bucket. "We ran out of brick ties." I knocked. Guess I should have knocked louder. I'd heard the knock under the shower and gambled for more time. Lost. "This way to the garage," I said, passing him, trying to look like a man who didn't measure the distance between two people in a single breath. The garage smelled of paint and old summer projects. Cans with dry rims, a folded sawhorse, brick samples leaning like books. He knelt, counting ties under his breath, and that's when I noticed a small sun inked on the inside of his wrist. Minimalist, no raise. He caught me looking and turned his arm so I could see it. "My cousin did it," he said with a flicker of pride. "Graduation present. Class of this year," I said. "Big year. You thinking about school?" He shrugged, filling the bucket. "Maybe I like working. Feels good to see something stand because I helped build it." I remembered being 18 at my parents' kitchen table, coding until sunrise, convinced a fragile idea could pay the rent. How good it felt to make something appear where nothing had been. The memory warmed and stung at once. Back in the living room, he paused by a photo on my wall, me on a red rock ledge outside Moab, sky too wide for the frame. "You look different there," he said. "Less spreadsheets," I answered. "More sky." He studied the picture a heartbeat too long. Then back at me, and something in the quiet between us shifted. Not a line crossed, but a current you don't notice until you step into it. The crew returned with tape measures and jokes, and the moment tucked itself away. The day settled into its rhythm. Emails at the kitchen island, the faint chemical scent of wet mortar, cicadas buzzing like power lines. Every time Mateo passed in my peripheral vision, hoisting bricks and laughing with the others, my pulse tripped. By late afternoon, the desert sky flirted with storm. A sudden wind grabbed the tarp over the new patio wall. Miguel swore, and we both moved to help. Mateo's fists gripped the plastic. He didn't look at me until the gust passed. "Thanks for not making it weird," he said, voice low behind the wind. "I'm very capable of making things weird," I tried to joke. "That's not what I saw," he said, eyes flicking to mine before turning back to the tarp. The storm drifted away. Inside, I tried and failed to focus. At 4, tools clanked into buckets and voices thinned. Miguel left tomorrow's plan, a half day to finish the wall. The van idled in the driveway. Mateo lingered in the doorway. "Need anything else before we go?" I could have said no and ended it there. Instead, guest baths free if you want to wash up. Outside, spigots still busted. He followed me down the hall. Water hissed as mortar rinsed from his hands. He shut the tap, listening to the last drops. "Does it get easier to say what you mean when you get older?" he asked. "No," I said, because any other answer felt false. "But it gets harder to live with yourself if you don't." He nodded slowly, as if filing that away. "Okay," he said. "See you tomorrow." The van honked. He turned 1 foot in the doorway. "There's a taco truck on 7th, I said, my voice caught between casual and reckless. "I'll be there around 8. If you're hungry." He weighed something I couldn't see, then nodded. 8, he said, quiet but decided. "If the van's back by then." "No pressure," I offered. "There is," he answered, almost smiling. But that's okay. The house felt too quiet after he left. Appliances hummed. A neighbor's lawn tool droned. I replayed the conversation until it didn't sound like me. At 7:50, I locked the door and told myself I was just walking. At 7:58, I stood under the taco truck neon, the world tilting because of one word said hours earlier. At 8:04, a white van slowed on 7th. My heart lurched. It didn't park, rolled past. Then a shadow detached from the sidewalk. Clean t-shirt, hair still damp. Mateo, hands in his pockets, trying not to look like he'd sprinted. "What's good here?" he asked, eyes already alight. We ate on the curb, traffic rinsing the night in sound. He told me about his mom's hotel shifts, saving for a used truck, the calm that came from laying bricks. I told him about Utah, about changing jobs too often, about building a life that looked solid but felt hollow. He drew a steady breath, choosing each word like a brick he didn't want to set crooked. "I'm not good with categories," he said. "People keep trying to put me in one. I don't know where I fit. But when I walked in today and you were just you, not the client version, something in me went quiet, clear. I'm not playing games. I'm figuring things out. If that's messy, I get it." "It's not messy," I said. "It's brave." He nodded, some tightness leaving his shoulders. "Miguel's right. People talk. I don't want either of us to cross a line. Then we keep it clean at the house," I said. "After work, if you want to talk, we talk. If not, we don't. I want," he said. We sat on the curb like any two people sharing an ordinary evening. He told me about his mom's rotating hotel shifts, borrowing his uncle's van for graduation, and how laying courses of brick calmed the part of his mind that never stops buzzing. I told him about the startup that collapsed on a Tuesday, and about the morning at 29 when I realized the life I'd built looked solid but felt hollow. When he left, I stood under the truck's neon glow with the taste of cinnamon rice milk and the sense that the street had tilted by a degree I couldn't name. Morning came sharp and bright. The crew rolled up with easy noise and coffee breath. I retreated to my kitchen island, laptop open, performing productivity. I didn't look for Mateo, which meant I was aware of him constantly. The scrape of a trowel, his quick laugh at something Louise said, the clean motion of him lifting brick from pallet to ledge. He didn't look for me either. Our mutual not looking made the air between us hum. At 10, a white SUV with a highway decal slid to the curb. A woman in an orange vest stepped out holding a clipboard like a badge. "Setback inspection," she announced. Miguel's jaw set. She measured, frowned at the tape, wrapped a footer, then finally said, "Height's good. Email rebar photos by end of day, and keep the driveway clear. Neighbors have complained about crews lingering." Miguel swallowed whatever he wanted to say. "We'll send photos," he replied, professional down to the muscle. When she left, he scanned the yard, eyes moving from the wall to Mateo to me as if solving for X. "Break in 5, he called, then to Mateo, chin toward the back gate. "Give me a hand." I stepped inside to avoid listening and failed anyway. I couldn't make out words, only the cadence of a warning. When they returned, Mateo's jaw was tight. He didn't glance toward the house again. By noon, the yard wavered in heat like a dream. I was midway through an email when metal skittered across concrete and someone said Mateo's name with sudden urgency. I was outside before the thought completed. He was on one knee by the saw table, bracing with one hand, eyes distant. The blade was off, thank goodness. Heat had done what blades sometimes don't. Miguel snapped for water. Louise sprinted to the cooler. I reached him first and guided Matteo into the kitchen shade back against the wall. "Small sips," I said, pressing a cold bottle to the base of his neck and another to his wrist. He obeyed, breath shallow, color returning in slow frames. He looked at me as if trying to merge two images, the client and the person who appeared when the ground tilted. Miguel arrived a beat later, worry shouldering past irritation. "You good?" "Yeah," Matteo rasped. "Got lightheaded." 10 minutes, Miguel said, his glance at me neither gratitude nor hostility. Something messier, undecided. "Thanks," he added at last, the word costing more than it should. When they returned to work, Matteo lingered under the eaves, pride smarting. "Sorry," he said through the screen door. "Should have taken a break." "You're not a machine," I answered. "It's 104 degrees. You need electrolytes." He huffed a small sound that faded quickly. "You're always prepared," he said. "Anxious boy starter kit," I joked. "Cables, snacks, powder packets." He rolled the bottle against his forehead and closed his eyes for a second that felt too intimate for a doorway. "Tomorrow's our last day here," he said, eyes still shut. Miguel moved the schedule. "Crew's headed to a bigger job in Glendale." The floor shifted under me by half an inch. "Then we keep our rule," I said. "Professional until noon." After a pause, he opened his eyes. "I want that," he said simply. By 2:30, the wall looked like it had always belonged. Miguel ran a hand along the courses and gave his approval by letting his shoulders drop half an inch. "Back tomorrow to seal," he said. "Half day," the van coughed to life. The others piled in. Matteo tied an extra knot in the tarp and, for the first time all day, didn't look toward the house. Not once. Der Schnitt wirkte sauber, oder zumindest so, als wäre es. Mein Handy vibrierte. Eine bekannte Nummer. "Kannst du mich im kleinen Park am Ende der Sackgasse treffen?" "5 Minuten bitte." Der Park war ein sonnenverbranntes Dreieck aus Gras unter 3 schmalen Bäumen. Ein Kreidespiel endete in einem verwischten Fleck. Ich setzte mich auf eine Bank, so heiß, dass ich mich nach vorne lehnen musste. Matteo kam von der anderen Seite. Nicht hastig, aber mit der Entschlossenheit eines Menschen, der gerade eine schwere Entscheidung getroffen hat. Er ließ sich mit einer Lücke aus Luft zwischen uns nieder. "Du hast gesagt, man kann kaum mit sich selbst leben, wenn man nicht sagt, was man meint." Seine Stimme war ruhig, fast wie eine Rüstung. "Hab ich", antwortete ich. Er hob den Blick und für einen Moment fiel jede Fassade. "Ich mag dich." Nicht als Scherz. Nicht nur, weil wir Zeit zusammen verbringen. Es gibt kein Wort, das nichts zerbricht, weder bei der Arbeit noch zu Hause. Aber das Gefühl bleibt. Etwas in mir machte einen unbeholfenen, hoffnungsvollen Sprung. "Ich mag dich auch", sagte ich leise. "Und ich will dein Leben nicht durcheinander bringen." Sein Handy vibrierte. Dann noch einmal. Beim zweiten Mal schaute er nach und sein Gesicht verlor die Farbe. Auf dem Display ein Foto von uns beiden, aufgenommen in der Nacht zuvor, mit einer Bildunterschrift von einer unbekannten Nummer. Er atmete tief durch. "Das kommt von jemandem, der uns beobachtet hat, und der Mann, der bei uns zu Hause das Sagen hat, wird das nicht gutheißen." Seine Stimme zitterte, auch wenn sie fest klingen wollte. "Wenn ich zurückgehe, riskiere ich alles." "Wenn ich nicht zurückgehe, auch." Ich fragte, was er von mir brauche. "Begleite mich nur, während ich meine Sachen hole. Keine Diskussion, keine langen Reden. Ich muss das tun, sonst bleibe ich vielleicht einfach dort." Wir hatten kaum den Straßenrand erreicht, als ein weißer Pickup abrupt um die Ecke bog und staubend anhielt. Die Tür schlug auf. Ein Mann stieg aus, sein Blick hart, die Hände angespannt. Er kam auf uns zu, die Sonne spiegelte sich auf einem metallischen Werkzeug in seiner Hand, ein stilles, aber deutliches Zeichen seiner Wut. Ich hob die Hände und hielt meine Stimme ruhig. Niemand hat irgendetwas getan. "Wir reden nur." Der Mann blieb stehen, sein Blick wechselte zwischen Matteo und mir. Ein Moment, der sich dehnte, bis klar wurde, dass Worte oder Taten jetzt über alles entscheiden. Der Zorn wich langsam, doch die Folgen blieben. Miguel ließ den Arm sinken, die Kiefermuskeln arbeiteten. Ein leises Quietschen. 2 Häuser weiter öffnete sich eine Tür. Ein Nachbar stand dort, das Handy nur leicht angehoben. Die Botschaft war klar. Wir werden beobachtet. Ich hielt meine Hände sichtbar. "Lass ihn einfach seine Sachen holen", sagte ich ruhig. Ich bleibe auf dem Gehweg. Du kannst alles sehen. Ein Muskel zuckte in Miguels Wange. 5 Minuten. Wir gingen los. Kein gemeinsamer Schritt, eher wie 3 Punkte eines schiefen Dreiecks. Das kleine Haus war schlicht, ein Grapefruitbaum davor, ungleich klingende Windspiele im heißen Wind. Miguel betrat zuerst die Stufen, drückte die Klinke, blieb mit der Schulter in der Tür stehen. 5 Minuten, wiederholte er. Ich nehme nur, was mir gehört, entgegnete Matteo. Ich blieb, wie versprochen, draußen, die Hände in den Taschen, keinen Schritt zu nah. Drinnen klapperten Schubladen, ein Reißverschluss zog sich ruckartig zu. Ein Hund bellte in der Ferne, ein Lieferwagen seufzte beim Bremsen. Miguel schritt unruhig hin und her, die Bewegungen wie ein zu schnell gestelltes Metronom. Er warf mir einen Blick zu. »Bist du Anwalt?« »Nein.« »Warum redest du dann, als würdest du Beweise sammeln?« Ich schwieg. Worte hätten hier nur Öl ins Feuer gegossen. Matteos Schritte stoppten. Dann seine Stimme angespannt. »Wo ist der blaue Umschlag?« Keine Antwort. Matteo kam in der Tür zum Vorschein, eine Tasche über der Schulter, Ruhe im Gesicht, aber nicht in den Augen. »Das Geld, das meine Mutter und ich gespart haben«, sagte er leise. Miguel presste die Lippen zusammen. »Miete, Essen, Fahrten zu deinem Job, den du verloren hast.« Ein roter Schimmer stieg Matteo in den Nacken. »Du hast gesagt, es gehört uns bis September.« »Pläne ändern sich.« Er schaute an Matteo vorbei, direkt zu mir. »Magst du es, Fremde aufzusammeln? Fang schon mal an, deinen Scheckblock zu zücken.« Ich reagierte nicht. Das hier ging nicht um mich. Matteo zog den Gurt seiner Tasche fester. »Ich zahle es zurück, alles.« »Mit welchem Job?« Miguel schnaubte. »Es spricht sich rum.« Matteo sah kurz zum Grapefruitbaum, als wollte er etwas Gewöhnliches in sich einprägen, bevor es verschwindet. »Ich finde etwas Neues. Ich immer.« Er trat auf die Stufe. Miguel verlagerte sich, blockierte den Weg, ohne ihn zu berühren. »Wenn du mit der Tasche gehst, kommst du nicht zurück. Nie.« Matteos Hand spannte sich um den Gurt. Die Nachbarin hob ihr Handy ein Stück höher. Windspiele klangen auf, ein einziger Ton, der lange nachhallte. »Ich gehe«, sagte Matteo ruhig, ohne Aggression, aber mit Entschlossenheit. Er sah Miguel direkt an. Ein alter, stiller Blick. Erinnerungen an gemeinsame Jahre, an späte Abende und unausgesprochene Lasten. Miguel atmete tief. Einmal, zweimal, dann wich er einen Schritt zurück, als hätte sich der Boden unter ihm verschoben. Matteo kam die Stufen hinab. Wir gingen Seite an Seite mit einem kleinen Spalt Luft dazwischen, wie wir es der Welt versprochen hatten. »Das war's«, rief Miguel uns nach. »Ihr glaubt, ihr könnt einfach gehen und alles ist gut?« Ich drehte mich um, wollte gerade leise antworten, als sich die Straße in blaues Licht tauchte. Ein Streifenwagen bog langsam um die Ecke, Blaulicht ohne Sirene, höflich wie ein vorsichtiges Klopfen. »Miguel, Matteo, me.« A tidy triangle of names passed between us like an old refrain. The officer answered his radio, thumbed his screen. »Which one of you is Matteo Hernandez?« Matteo tightened the duffel strap, set it higher on his shoulder. »I am,« he said, steady. The cop nodded, glanced at Miguel, then at me. »Okay. I need to ask a few questions. And I need everyone to keep their hands where I can see them.« He listened to his earpiece for a beat, then added, »Also, whose photo is this?« He angled his phone just enough for me to catch the neon glow from last night's taco truck. 2 silhouettes I already knew too well. If this was connected, we were about to have a difficult conversation. I didn't sleep much that night. Everything felt like it had reached a simmer. The officer took our names, logged the call, and did the most important thing. He lowered the heat. He told Miguel to set the wrench down on the porch rail. He confirmed I was standing on the sidewalk because I wanted to be there. He told Matteo, in an even voice, that an 18-year-old could decide where to live, that what he saw was someone moving out, not a crime. He warned us about public disturbances, wrote a case number on a card, and lingered long enough to make sure Matteo could pick up the duffel without anyone making a scene they couldn't take back. When the patrol car finally drove off, the grapefruit tree clicked in the evening breeze and the Phoenix sky bruised purple. We walked a block in silence, duffel strap biting into Matteo's shoulder, the heat coming off the pavement in slow waves like the street was exhaling. I wanted to solve everything. Call the hotel, put down a deposit, invent safety from money and intention. Instead, I texted Noah, bartender, friend, soft place for a lot of people who needed one. Room open, I wrote. Dots that didn't vanish. Keys under the mat. Come back. Tell him the couch is yours as long as you need. No charge. We turned toward third. Mateo moved like someone adjusting to a new gravity. I don't want to be your project, he said at last, not looking at me. You're not, I answered. You asked me to stand there. I stood there. Everything else is your choice. Noah's place smelled like lime and old vinyl sleeves. A box fan hummed Mercy into the apartment. Noah hugged Mateo like he understood steadiness could be loaned for a while, handed over fresh sheets, pointed to the shower, then left us in quiet. Mateo sat on the couch edge, elbows on his knees, staring at that far-off middle distance you only get after you step into a future and wait to see if the water is shallow. You didn't tell me what you wanted, I said, voice low, so I will. You can say yes or no. He looked up. I counted to 3 to steady myself. I want to take this slow. I want you safe working and sleeping somewhere that's yours. And I don't want to start anything while you're still on my job. Tomorrow at noon when the ceiling's done, that line ends. If after that you still want tacos, I'll be there. If not, I'll understand. Tacos, he said. But yeah, after tomorrow morning, a half day will feel like a lifetime. Miguel kept his voice short and his eyes everywhere but on me. I returned the favor. Mateo worked with the kind of focus that turned the noise in his head into clean lines of mortar. At 11:54, he ran the final bead of sealant, peeled off his gloves, and drank deep without glancing toward the house. Miguel loaded the van in near silence. When the engine caught, Mateo spoke to him at the passenger door for a moment I couldn't hear, then closed it gently. The van eased away. The new wall glinted, wet and certain, the way new things look just before they dry and become ordinary. That night, under red and green neon, I held a paper cup of horchata and watched him arrive from the thrift store. A shirt a size too big. Hair still settling, all the versions of himself layered in one person. The kid who'd said, "You look real." The apprentice who had kept his balance at a saw table. The man who had chosen a couch over a rule that dimmed him. We ate at the curb in the warm wind. He said he'd called his mom on her break. She cried, then got practical. A cousin in Tempe had a room for a couple months that could work if the tips were decent. He'd started a hardware store near the light rail while he looked for a union crew that needed a quick learner more than roomers. He promised he'd pay Miguel back whether Miguel demanded it or not. I told him I'd called a friend at the masonry supply yard, a foreman, who'd give him a tryout if he showed up. Saturday with steel-toe boots and a clear head. I'm not buying you the boots, I said. And he laughed like the border between help and harm had been drawn and agreed upon. Days settled into a pattern that refused to look like a montage because life rarely cooperates with neat edits. Paperwork and bus routes, burnt coffee and small good jokes, a missed call from a foreman that became a better call the next day. He moved off Noah's couch into a temporary room and texted a photo of a cheap lamp that made it look like a promise. Another text showed a blister shaped like Arizona on his palm with the caption, "Earning it." We didn't spend every night together, or even most nights. We learned the rhythm of wanting to and choosing not to because pacing felt like respect. When we did meet, it was breakfast before a shift or a sunset walk through Cano Park where palm silhouettes cut the sky into neat shapes. He kept his promise about work. The supply yard friend came through. The foreman watched him set strings in heat that made grizzled hands sloppy and liked his steadiness enough to give him 3 days. 3 days became a week. A week became the rest of the month. On payday, he bought a pair of steel-toe boots with his own money and texted me the receipt like it was a small, private triumph. One Sunday after a morning that smelled of oranges and laundry soap, we went back to the wall that had started everything. The seal had cured to a soft sheen. The HOA woman had sent her approval without warmth, but also without a fine. Neighbors still had their phones, but they'd found other screens to point at. We leaned against the brick, shoulder to shoulder, at the exact distance we'd earned. "You know what still gets me?" he asked. "How fast everything can tilt. One day I'm saving for a truck," he said. The next I'm folding my life into a duffel and hoping a couch is soft. I watched a lizard cross the top course, pause as if it owned the place. A wall looks straight because you check it every few inches, I said. Every course. Otherwise it drifts and you don't notice until the end. He smiled sideways. So you're saying we're a wall? I'm saying we're a line, I answered. One we choose to keep true. He shifted toward me with a calm that didn't need proving. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Meaning the tacos, the sidewalk, everything that led here. I measured the question. Easy answers, cheap and hard days. I regret not learning sooner how to tell the truth out loud, I said. But this, no. You were the first person in a long time who saw me without the version, and I didn't want to look away. He nodded. The quiet between us felt earned. He reached for my hand and didn't hide it. We didn't perform anything for an audience. We just sat with 10 fingers and a fault line we'd decided not to live on anymore. If this story landed on something in you, about boundaries, about courage, about choosing the harder honesty over the quieter compromise, maybe take a minute to check the line in your life. Who's your Noah? Who could you be Noah for? We didn't need a camera to prove the change. We had small daily work, the commute, the paychecks, the text of a lamp that said this could be a home. We had the ritual of showing up, and that turned out to be enough.